And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Also brought to you in part by Yahoo DFS. More on that momentarily. Dan Strafford, Adam Scherer along with you on this Wednesday morning. Getting ready for a 4-game. Yes, that's 4 games on this NBA slate. We'll talk through each game individually rather than going position by position. But as always, I am overly concerned with Adam. How the hell are you doing?
Doing good. Basketball season just keeps going on and keeps being more of the same.
Have you considered NHL? No, it's not that bad, right? Like it's not.
I mean, at least basketball is fun. Basketball is fun to sweat DFS wise. I love watching NHL, but
Yeah, NHL is a great sport to watch. I would agree. The DFS gameplay and Cliffy and Vots and all the guys who do and Jake, obviously, great job. Check them out if you're into hockey. I cannot play hockey DFS. It's just not something that I deal with well. And it is up there with baseball, and it's very event driven, and you have to understand that. But it's not something I'm very into. But
the difference for me between hockey and baseball, why I enjoy baseball DFS so much more, is that with baseball, you can like look at the app on your phone, and it's like, okay, like my stack is coming up. I can turn that game on.
Right.
Hockey, you just have to watch the whole game and hope that your guys do something for 1 3-second period of time.
Right. There's a rebound and a putback. There it is. I would say NBA has been as crazy as expected. High totals, teams tanking, everything that you could expect. I know there's long discussions around Lonnie Walker and how certain players out there in the world got to such exposures. I will say this, and I mean this genuinely as someone who doesn't optimize. I'm not optimize your user, blah, 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 blah. But for those of you who are using it, and for those of you who are then just walking away, there is something to be said around optimizing after on late swap sites like DraftKings after lock and just making sure that you're staying on top of it. This isn't to say don't have your family time. Don't ignore your family after lock. But if you are playing and you are investing money in this and you are doing it to try to make money, not just for fun and not just to have some fun drafting a team, take the time to understand what late swap is, how late swap optimization works, and exactly what you should be looking at after lock comes and goes. But with that said, we have 4 games on tap. We're going to go through them pretty quickly here to give you an understanding of where Adam is looking early on. Don't forget, we have tons of content available in front of the paywall. That includes the NBA strategy show each and every morning. Then you also have, of course, the deeper dive, which is Adam and Lofty. And then you get the live before lock, which is a rotating cast of characters, including Ed Fear, Rendon. You get Josh there sometimes. You get Spags, of course, and some other characters, including EMAC as well. And I use the word characters lovingly, but accurately as well. So take that for what it's worth. But what we have here is 4 games. Philadelphia and Washington is our first one up, Adam. This is a game that currently, as we record on late Tuesday night, has a line of minus 6.5 for Philadelphia. 234 over under. Wizards are at home, but that line seems small at minus 6.5 for the Wizards team that has struggled so much. Over under seems right about where I would expect it. Does it seem small to you, or am I overestimating how much better a team the 76ers are than the Wizards?
Yeah, it seems pretty small. I mean, obviously it's a road game, but considering how fast the Wizards play and that they're not going to stop anything and that their front court against Joel Embiid is going to consist of maybe Mo Wagner, maybe not Mo Wagner, Rui, Bertans. Yeah, it seems like they should get their asses kicked.
This should be a roll game, as Adam just said. The Wizards leading the league in pace on the year, as often we see bad teams do. They play up in pace, try to get more shots, and also give up more shots because they're not playing all that great defensively. Philadelphia on the year is 20th overall in pace. As we break this one down, you sort of let the cat out of the bag from an analysis perspective at the top there. Embiid stands out at sub 10K, and maybe DK is up to some of their shenanigans with pricing here on a shorter slate, but 9,700 for Embiid against a Washington front court that seems non-existent would be a great starting point for any lineup, it would seem, on this slate.
Yeah, Embiid should just absolutely eat here. There's like, if Thomas Bryant were there, it still wouldn't matter. It would still be a great spot, but Wagner, The biggest, I would say the biggest concern, and I'm only half joking, like the most likely way I think that Embiid gets slowed down here is if Wagner plays. We've seen Wagner be really, really good at picking up offensive fouls. He did it against Cat, is the one that really stands out. So, maybe some like offensive fouls. Also, Wagner seems to really enjoy just antagonizing, and we know Embiid doesn't have has a relatively quick temper. But I mean, outside of this dumb stuff like that, I don't know how the Wizards slow him down whatsoever.
Yep. What about the rest of this game? We've seen a little bit of a resurgence from Isaiah Thomas. If you try to break down the point guard position, you have Ben Simmons, IT2 on the other side of this one. Either of them of any interest to you in this slate?
It partly depends on Wagner, because if he's out, you still have a really thin Wizards team. Looking at that game against Orlando, you got 34 minutes from Isaiah Thomas, and then you got only the 14 from Ish Smith. So still splitting point guard minutes there. Thomas, obviously if he's playing well, he gets more playing time. I don't think it's a great spot for either one, and I would rather be taking a shot at front court guys for Washington.
And where do you break down Ben Simmons in sort of this overall slate and how he's been playing of late? And does he maybe make an appearance in some lineups on this Wednesday night?
Yeah, it's a good spot for him. It's just a terrible defensive team. He's affordable at 8K, guard forward eligibility on DraftKings. Richardson's still out. Not that makes a big impact for anything, but it should at least put the ball in Simmons' hands maybe a little bit more. I think everyone on Philadelphia is a really good option.
Yeah, and you have some decent price points here. Again, I would say as we use DraftKings, I'll talk a little bit about Yahoo's offerings momentarily. But as you look at DK, it does feel like some price manipulation is probably the best way I can put this. Some pushing down of price points on a 4-game slate, make it a little bit more wide open, which does make it a little bit more difficult for building. But you do have Brad Beal at 8,700. He's a guy who carries, I think, 30-plus usage on the year. What is he at? Let's see. Bradley Beal's at 30.5, just behind LeBron and behind Joel Embiid at 31.2. So Brad Beal has obviously been a focal point of this offense, somebody that over the course of the year clearly has been asked to carry more of the load because there's just not much there. Do you like Beal at all at 87 on DK?
Yeah, it's not like it's a good matchup against Philly, but he played 42 minutes against Orlando. He lost the last minute and a half because the game finally got out of reach. We know that Scott Brooks will run him into the ground. If Wagner's out, there's more minutes available. Like his baseline is 37, 38 minutes, but if Wagner's out, there's no real reason not to be expecting 40 plus again.
Any final thoughts on this game before we move on to Houston and Toronto?
Davis Bertans and Rui, if Wagner's out. Rui played 39 and a half minutes. Bertans played 40. Obviously, there's huge foul risk for Rui going against Embiid, but the Wizards just really, if Wagner's out, really don't have options. Admiral Schofield was the backup center for about 6 minutes. He's not a center. Davis Bertans is not a center. They don't have options, but they have to run guys out there. So I think that both of those guys will be good plays.
I will say the Admiral Schofield, I think I read it correctly, played in the G League earlier in the day and then came out and played for the Wizards. That's a career story to tell the grandkids at some point when you all are all said and done with the league. That is for sure. We get Houston and Toronto up next, where we do have our most expensive player on the slate in James Harden. And he is the one that's priced typically. It seems like everyone else is down about, I would say, between $400 and $800 on DK. Harden is right there at $12K flat. He of the made yet not made, maybe made slam dunk that sent that game into all sorts of craziness between the Spurs and the Rockets, which led to double overtime, which led to some people making money, some people losing money when it came to betting and DFS. But this game, as presently constituted, -1.5 in favor of Toronto, who is home, 231 over under. For this contest, we'll take a look at a couple other over-under. Well, one more over-under. We don't have one as of right now for Denver and New York, at least where I'm looking. How do you take this game? Do you see it as an opportunity for Harden to exceed expectations at $12K, and I assume slightly reduced ownership because of that price point, or would you stay away against Toronto?
I think it'll be pretty tough to get there. unless he's like really low owned for a 4-game slate, I don't really see it just because it's a tough matchup against Toronto. Obviously, he's going to be the highest projected player on the slate, but he's just really expensive where there's a lot of guys priced down. He's over $3,000 more expensive than Bradley Beal, for example. And Beal, as we said, probably plays 40 plus minutes here. Yeah, he can go for 70 plus, obviously, but I think that you're going to get better lineups most likely if you go with guys a little bit cheaper, especially because at least as of right now, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any great, really cheap value options.
Right, and to point that out, it does look like not much to talk about from an injury perspective. You do have Daniel House, who was questionable on, and I think I might have said Wednesday at the top of the show. I meant Thursday. We record Wednesday into whatever. It doesn't matter. But nonetheless, my days are all screwed up. I'll explain that at a later date. Anyway, House is questionable for Thursday's game against Toronto. As we look through, anybody else stand out, or is this a game that you're targeting in any way on a 4-game slate?
Some interest in Capella just because he's playing so many minutes. It's a tough spot against the Toronto front court, but before he missed a couple games with illness, he was playing 36 minutes, played a bunch of minutes again against San Antonio. So I think that he's a reasonable option. If House is back, it takes value away from pretty much all the wings that are now priced up a bit.
All right, let's not belabor the point. We'll move on to Denver and New York. We were talking a little bit about Fizdale and his hiring, and this rotation for the Knicks. It's a mess, and I will say that as a Knicks fan, you don't know who's coming, who's going with the injuries, and exactly where they go in the front court. But this is a matchup here with the Denver Nuggets. In New York, you have the slow-footed Nikola Jokic. At least that's what I've been explained many times over. He has not been playing great to start the year, so his ownership has dwindled a bit. I think it's -7 in favor of Denver, not seeing an over-under as of yet, but would assume that it's probably one of the lower ones on the night. Looking at pace of play, Knicks are 28th, Nuggets are 29th. What's your guess here for an over-under? I would say, I guess mine would probably be 208 and a half.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
That feels right. I mean, first of all, if we nail that, we have to bet on something at some point on this slate, because I'm going to have to say that that's a very distinct line. There's nothing as we record this now. But is this a game you ignore because of slow pace of both these teams, or do you find at least some pieces in here that you might at least find attractive for lineup construction?
I hate the spot for the Knicks because on top of the fact that you're dealing with the Knicks, it's a really, really tough spot against Denver. They're a good defensive team. They play really slow. You could have all of Peyton Ntilikina back, or both of Peyton Ntilikina back. Morris is back, so you're just losing minutes there. Robinson's price tag's coming up. Really tough for me to get to anything on the Knicks. Denver side's more appealing. You have a reasonably priced $8,500 Jokic. The problem with him, of course, is the minutes. Like, he's playing 32, 33 minutes more often than not, but the price tag's still reasonable. You have, decent tournament options as far as upside goes with Jamal Murray and Will Barton at reasonable price points. So I don't love either side, but definitely more interested in the Nuggets.
All right, let's move on from there, because listen, you get Adam a ton from a write-up perspective most days of the week when it comes to NBA, as Dave still focuses on NFL, but even further, you get him on the deeper dive 4-game slate. They'll be able to dive into, no pun honestly intended there, dive in even deeper on each and every one of these games on that show. Make sure to cover off on any of the potential upside, any of the potential downside to any of these plays, anything that pops up from an injury perspective. Of course, the Knicks backcourt, as we've talked about many times over, has a ton of injuries between Elfrid Payton with his hamstring and Ntilikina. You do have Marcus Morris dealing with some neck issues. He's questionable for Thursday's game. Just a ton of injuries here, and a terrible rotation. So you take that for what it's worth and then build from there, I would suppose. We're going to close this out with the final game of the night, which is Phoenix and New Orleans. A couple of lines that are creeping up as we record. 232 and 233 I see as the over-under. -1.5 in favor of New Orleans, -3 in favor of New Orleans, depending on what site you're on. But this is a game that clearly has at least some potential for some plays. You have some cheap options, though. Booker is cheaper than he may have been last year many times over. He's at 7,500. Drew Holiday is 7,300. So you have some upside players there, and then you have some nuts and bolts plays with the likes of Alonzo Ball at 5,300, Kaminsky at 5,300 as well. Does this game shake out as one that you think may be more featured in lineups, or do you think this one is one you'll stay away from?
I think it'll be a pretty appealing game.
It feels as though it should be. I don't know if I'm misreading the price points, but there does seem to be some open and higher upside potential plays at the price points. Not necessarily saying these are the guys that are going to give you the best night, but at the price points could give you some upside. How do you see this shaking out? Where do you see your top plays from this one?
Yeah, there's really cheap pricing in this game for a New Orleans team that plays really fast and doesn't play much defense. Phoenix is a top 10 team in pace as well. So there should be a lot of scoring here. And yeah, 233 total. So yeah, I think that the pricing is really soft. 8,200 for Ingram and 7,300 for Holiday are both nice. 5,300 for Ball really jumps out. Kenrich Williams and Derek Favors are both questionable. If Favors is out, then I really like a $3,800 price tag for Jackson Hayes. Josh Hart, if Kenrich Williams is out, should play mid to upper 20s at 4,500. JJ Redick is sub 5K. I think it's going to be really, really easy to get to this game, and I think it's a really good game to get to.
Yeah, and will be always interesting to look at ownership, right? And to understand if the rest of the field is seeing this similarly, or do we get maybe a little bit of a ownership discount on a 4-game slate in this one? Would assume not. Would assume at these price points on DK that will not be the case, simply because short slate will often make it pretty easy to get to where and when you need to. Signing into a website and being logged out of a website is one of the worst things that can happen to a human being. Obviously, a little bit of hyperbole there. I was trying to pull up Yahoo to read down their offering specifically for this upcoming weekend, but you do have the NFL Baller Tournament. As always, it's been $200K over the past couple of weeks, and they do each and every night have an NBA baller as well. The thing I want to alert you of, though, over at Yahoo is that they often do management-free or even overlay tournaments. So you want to be on the lookout for that. If you're looking for tournaments that are lower risk, give you a little bit more upside, Yahoo's been doing a lot of that. You're not going to get that from the other sites. So Yahoo DFS may be behind DK, maybe behind FanDuel, but they are trying to do the small things to give their customers a little bit of a bump and a little bit more of a better experience when playing DFS. So check out Yahoo DFS whenever you have the opportunity. So, Adam, we've gone through the 4 games. Want to take a quick look. Is there a play or a specific set of players that through these 4 games you think you'll have most exposure to, or do you think this is sort of wide open as far as a 4-game slate goes?
Embiid. I wouldn't be surprised if I have 100% Embiid. He just really, really stands out. Lonzo, I think I'll get a lot of, especially if anyone's out on the Pels.
Yep. Lonzo and Embiid were the 2 names. And I have not rostered Lonzo Ball once in his NBA career. I've never once rostered him. I also hand build, so it may be a little bit of bias from me. But I've never once. And this seems like the night where I'll have a ton of him simply because of that price point. I think a 4-game slate and the matchup, the pace will benefit him greatly. And I am a sucker for Brad Beal, so I'll probably have a decent amount of Beal here, hopefully playing a ton of minutes and at probably typical ownership for Beal on a 4-game slate. But any final thoughts on this one, Adam, before we go?
Nope.
There it is. Always the man of many words, Adam Scher. We appreciate him. As always, find him on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. Find me at Dan Strafford. Be forewarned, not a lot of sports tweets. I do a lot of family tweets, so be ready for that. If you decide to follow me on the Twitter machine, find Osmo at Osmo_com. And I remind you always, Osmo NBA, Osmo NFL, Osmo MLB when the season comes around. Those are the handles doing giveaways as well. So if you want to try to score a sports-specific package from Osmo.com, you'll want to follow them and make sure you're entering all the contests they have up. Typically Sunday and Monday Night Football are pretty popular for giveaways when it comes to our NFL content. With that said, NBA Strategy Show is coming up on Thursday morning. Then you have Deeper Dive at 5 p.m. 6 p.m. will be live before lock. Only 4 games. They all lock by 8 p.m. So this is an early night. We get family time, Adam. Are you psyched?
Yeah, can't wait.
There.
Just more time to sit in my apartment and maybe go grab a drink or something.
Yeah, there you go. Or maybe eat some food. Food is good. Food's family. With that said, wish you the best luck on this Thursday slate. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning with Lofty. Adam's back with you Saturday morning with EMAC right here on the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com.